Welcome you today to our latest webinar on using standards and competencies to ensure expectation clarity. This webinar will provide you with the opportunity to reflect on the key areas being faced in schools and colleges regarding supporting staff and teaching, and provide you with some tips and solutions. We like our webinars to have some participation, so please ensure initially you're muted, as that prevents feedback, but use the chat facility to ask questions. We will try to respond as quickly as possible during the webinar. Presenting today's webinar is myself, Andy Goodeve, and Becky Howitt. We both have a background of teaching and education. Every member of the team, irrespective of their role, has a valuable part to play within any organisation. Colleagues are easily identify when they feel others are not pulling their weight and performing. They expect, in the interest of fairness, that those not performing for the success of the organisation will be dealt with swiftly and effectively. Life is judged on fairness. Is it fair, for example, to expect the same performance from a teacher in their second year of teaching as for someone who's been teaching for 15 years? In a school, for example, there's a significant difference in salary between an M1 and M6 teacher, depending on their location. Further salary increases can be added for being a leading practitioner, those who model excellent practice and sharing knowledge and skills. And additional increases in salary can also be awarded for other areas such as SENCO and curriculum development. These salary differences are not taking into account staff at UPS, leadership, support staff roles, and salary. For some colleagues, it's about understanding roles and expectations. Ensuring colleagues have clarity of what is expected in their role is key to a success of any organisation. All colleagues should be aware of what is required and their performance measured against their role and expectations. Some organisations assume that colleagues are clear of what is expected in their roles, but unfortunately these roles and responsibilities evolve over time, and expectations have a tendency to become blurred if they're not regularly revisited. It's important that during the year that colleagues are given the opportunity to discuss the performance against expectations on an ad hoc basis. Not just part of their annual performance review with just 3 meetings, but make it the norm to regularly catch up to discuss how things are progressing, their performance and expectations, both formally and informally. Ensuring support, training and development is regularly offered when required. It's important that careful consideration is given to the expectations of a role, its responsibilities and the required experience. Do you expect the same performance for all leaders, teachers and support staff? To address this issue, in standards and competencies, expectations were introduced. An example of these were the teacher standards that came into effect in September 2012. These were intended to be used for a range of purposes that include assessing the suitability of those in initial teacher training, assessment for the competence of newly qualified teachers, the appraisal of qualified teachers, and by Ofsted to provide a consistent benchmark for assessing the quality of teaching. As well as teacher standards, there are a range of recognised standards and competencies available that include post-threshold teachers, SENCO, head teacher, TA, HLTA and business manager. Some organisations, in consultation with staff, have created their own role expectations based on the details outlined in job descriptions. Sharing expectations for roles also provides guidance for colleagues who potentially want to progress in their careers. Examples being a teaching assistant to a higher level teaching assistant, main scale teacher to post-threshold teacher, or a deputy head to a head teacher. It allows your colleagues to clearly understand the expectations of their role and collect the required knowledge and skills to make them ready to take their next steps in their career. By setting out clear expectations, empowers and unites the team, allowing them the freedom to act more autonomously, with a common goal of driving up standards and improving the outcomes for our children and young people. I would now like to take the opportunity to pass you to my colleague Becky Howitt, who will now demonstrate to you IP and how it will be able to assist you in the process of making your colleagues aware and understand the expectations of their role.
Thanks, Andy. So I'm going to have a look at how IP supports the assessment and the analysis of standards and competences, and gives us some reason for asking our staff to rate themselves. So those of you who have been using school IP, college IP, university IP, Alto in the past obviously know how time efficient the certain functions and functionality can be, and how we can use it to reduce paper. But the same goes for using competences and standards. It's also really useful to be able to gather all of that information together as a line manager or an SLT, so we can assess how well our staff are doing. So let's go to an individual staff member's work area. That's where they have a look at their standards. And what we're going to have a look at, we're going to have a look at the end game first. We're going to have a look at how that individual staff assesses and evidences. And we'll look at that as a staff member, and we'll also look at it as a line manager. Then after that, we're going to see how you set those standards up as a site administrator. And we're going to specifically have a look at sets of DFE standards and how to create your own bespoke sets of standards. And then we're going to have a look at how the line managers and the SLT analyse the data that's coming from the standards. Excuse me. So I'm going to log in now. First, as a teacher. So here's Jessica. Jessica's a teacher, and here's Jessica's work area. And Jessica's got to the work area by going to my details and my work area. And if you've used your IP system before, you'll know that you get to standards, or you might know that as competencies if you're a college, through clicking on this area here. So this is the finished product. We're going to start Blue Peter style, finished product first, and we're going to work our way around to the beginning, as I've just mentioned. So this is Jessica, and how would she see this page? Well, she would see a data chart here, call that a spider diagram, of all of the data coming from this table here. So this table shows what standards have been set by the IP site administrator for Jessica. She's got 9 standards there. Some of those standards have evidence against them, as indicated by the closed paperclip. And if I roll over, I can read the titles of those pieces of evidence. It's got an open paperclip. That means that there's no evidence as yet. And I can see here that all of these standards, I'm expected to achieve these by the end of this review period, which in my school is the 31st of August. Now, because I'm a teacher, as Jessica, Jessica has got the teaching standards assigned to her. Now, it might mean that if you're a UPS teacher, you have teaching standards and you have a further set of standards. That's absolutely fine. You can be assigned more than one set of standards. Now, the interesting thing here is that Jessica is expected to review her standards by changing the reviewee rating at relevant times throughout the year. That might be just before an interim review period, for example, or it might be expected that Jessica goes and logs on an ongoing basis, changing her rating of herself. And as you've probably seen already, every time Jessica changes the rating, so does the spider diagram. Now, the pink area indicates Jessica's rating, and the grey area indicates the line manager's rating. And in a moment, I'm going to show you how the line manager can change the reviewer rating. But the reason why we have this spider diagram is so that at relevant points, these areas can act as a discussion point. And if they're too far away, then they're probably going to be the main focus of your discussions, because really we'd be expecting them to align as much as possible in this school. So let's see how the reviewer, how it looks for them. So they would go to home. They would go to my staff and find Jessica. So here she is. Here's Jessica. And again, just before that interim review, or perhaps even during it, the line manager would go into Jessica's standards area and then would also start changing the rating accordingly. Okay, so that's why we that's how we assess as the individual and the line manager. But in this school, Jessica's also expected to upload some evidence to prove that she's meeting that standard and at the rate that she's giving herself. So let's concentrate on standard number 3, demonstrate good subject and curriculum knowledge. I'm going to upload some evidence to that. So I would go to what next? Add evidence. And I might choose a file, or I might decide to put some text in there, or even a URL, perhaps to a Google document or a website elsewhere. I'm going to stick with the file. I'm going to go to select and I'm going to upload some assessment data from my computer or my shared drive in school. Assessment Maths 7. And then I'm going to link it to the relevant standard. In this case, we were focusing on standard number 3. Okay, so I'm going to add that piece of evidence in, and now I can see I have a closed paperclip, and when I hover over, I've got Maths Assessment Year 7. Now, if I was a line manager and I wanted to add some evidence in for Jessica, I could do that. Here I am, Tim Smith again, and I could add evidence in for Jessica in exactly the same way. Okay, I'm going to move on to how we set these standards up for our staff. Well, you have to be logged in as an IP site administrator, and you need to do this before reviews are started. So let's go to Tim Smith, who happens to be an IP site administrator, and he can see settings within his user rights. So he goes to settings, he goes to performance management, and he goes to standards. So the first set of standards, you can see I've got 115 here feeding through for this school. And if I click on type, I can see all of these different types of standards that I've imported into my school site as the administrator, and I've assigned these standards to different groups of people. It's really obvious. Teaching standards go to teachers, the head teacher standards go to head teachers, possibly as well to other members of the leadership team who are aspiring to be head teachers. We've got leading support services, we've got finances, very specific to all of the different roles within school. Now, a lot of these, including the teaching standards, come from the DFE, and we've already uploaded these ready for you. And to do that, you would go to what next? Import standards, and you would select those teaching standards you wanted to import coming straight from the DFE site. I would make sure that this set of standards align with my end review date. So my end review date is the 31st of August, and I would assign these to my UPS teachers and my main scale teachers. Go to next, ensure that I have all of the correct data here, and then I would import that set of standards. I'm not actually going to do that because we've got them already. So I'm going to just cancel that. And those imported standards would appear here, and I can then filter just down to that set of standards. At any time I can filter that set of standards. I can click on the pencil, I can check my due dates, and I can check to see if they're associated with the correct staff member types in my school. I'm going to add UPS teacher into that too. And I would go down and I can add in any groups of teachers in at any time into those standards, like so. Okay, so there are times that the standards that we have here already set for you might just not do it. So what can we do about that? Well, we can click into any of these standards, and before the reviews are started, I can change the text on those in the title, in the description, and save those before the review is started. So that's what will be fed through. Or I can create a whole new set of bespoke standards. So the first thing I would do would be to go to standard type and first call it a type. So I would click on add, and these are going to be my Deventio school standards. And you might want to do these for, say, induction members of staff. You might want a bespoke set. You might want a bespoke set for NQTs. Or perhaps if you are a religious school or academy, it might be a bespoke set there. And I'm going to make all of those inactive right from the get-go and save those. So now I've got to create my standards to be popped into my standard type. I'm going to bring them all back, refresh that page, and now start creating. I'm going to go to add. This is my Deventio 1 standard that says this or the other. I might add a description in if appropriate, always matching the due date to my review date in this school. It might be a different due date for yourselves. And this is where I match it to the standard type that I've just created. Deventio school standards, here we go. And at this point, I'm going to assign that to all roles within my school. And I would continue to do this with my second standard, adding in all of the appropriate detail and making sure that I've associated that with the correct standard type, and the correct staff members will then receive those in their performance management. So I'm now going to just do a double check. Let's have a look at what we've set up already. There's that set, and they will be going to all members of staff once their review is opened. So I can do a quick test of that out. If I go to home and my staff, all staff will find a staff member who needs to start their review. And it should be fed through there. Let me just give that another go. Let's see if fed through to there's a setting in this site which I needed to add in, but it would appear there. Okay, so we've gone through setting up the standards, setting up the DFE ones, setting up the bespoke ones. Now I'm going to move on to reporting and analysis of standards. So the first thing I did when I logged into Tim, who's the administrator and line manager, I had a look at Jessica. Now, if I wanted to pull off an individual report and analysis of Jessica's standards, I could do this in a couple of different ways. I would go to standards, and I could just export the data in her table here, and I can export it into Excel, Word or PDF. And it opens in the bottom left-hand corner for me in an Excel spreadsheet. And I can see all of the details of Jessica's standards, the due date, who the review is, obviously Jessica, who her reviewer is, the actual standard, and where it is linked to. So if I just extend these columns here, we can see which evidence is linked to the standards. And I can see what the standards are, what typeset they're coming from, and most importantly of all, what the reviewee rating is and what the reviewer rating is. So that's one set of data that you can pull off from this system for an individual. The other set of data for the individual is accessible in What Next and reports. Okay, and I'm just going to ensure that I've just got standards ticked there. And this time it's giving me the reduced amount of data of the date due, the actual standard and the ratings. And I can decide to download that or print that out if I wish. I'm going to close that report. But actually, if you're a line manager or if you're a member of the SLT, you might want to see all of this data cumulatively for a group of staff. So if you're either one of those users, you would have access to the My Reports area and the standards reports within that area. And I can do pretty much the same kind of reporting that I've just shown you. I've got all of the table of all of the staff in this school here. And I can see that I've got a lot of staff because I've got my data donut here showing me the reviewee rating and at what level. So I've got 58 people who are saying that they are developing at a specific standard. 96 are successfully meeting, etc. And it gives me the percent of those people. I've got 59% who have not rated themselves against a standard. And the reviewer, the line manager, again, I've got my data donuts. Now, I can click on any one of these areas and it will filter this table below here for me. But before I do that, I might want to export that data into Excel like we've just seen for the individual. It will open in the bottom left-hand corner. And I can enable the editing of that, where then I can start to, let's just get rid of that line, use the features and functionality of Excel. So I might put a filter on here, and I might just want to have a look at the reviewer rating and put it into alphabetical order, which shows me the areas for concern at the top. And I can do all sorts of fancy things in Excel by creating all sorts of other charts. And if you or somebody in your organisation knows Excel well, you might be able to make that into lots of fancy, interesting analysis charts like so. Okay, other than that, I can continue to use the tools within School IP to analyse my data. One of them might be I can use these double-headed arrows here, and this time let's have a look at the reviewee ratings. And if I click on the double-headed arrows once, I can then return the data in alphabetical order, again showing areas for concern first. Okay. Other ways that I can start analysing the data even a little bit deeper would be for me to use my filters. So I want to filter on a particular staff member type because I want to find out what my main scale teachers are up to and how they're performing. And I'm going to add another filter in and go even a little bit deeper, because I want to have a look at everybody in my maths department. I'm going to search here. Okay, so I can have a look at everybody who is rating their standards in just the maths department. And if I scroll down, I can see people in the maths department who have not got standards here. So we'd need to sort that out. And I just want to filter now to the line managers who are reviewing their staff members to areas of concern. And so these are the areas for me as a line manager or as an SLT to address in my maths department. And again, throughout all of the filters, I get an overall picture of how my maths department now are doing. And at any one time, I can go to what next, and I can print the results of the table of reports here. Okay, showing just those people who are showing areas for concern, who are main scale teachers in my maths department. So that report can look very different in very different ways. So if I return all of the data, I can pull a report off of all of the data. Now 11 pages worth, showing all of the percents from all of the data across my school. Okay, so I hope you've been able to see that School IP is very versatile in being able to report and analyse the data, and the purpose of which is so assessing and evaluating standards helps every member of the team. It's not just for the line managers or the SLT to be able to report, but it's for each individual, irrespective of their role, to understand that they've got a valuable part to play within the organisation. And the standards give them the list to enable them to know what they need to do to achieve this. So thank you for listening. I wonder if you've got any questions, Sue, at all?
Thanks. No, I think that's really given me some food for thought. It's probably the area that I'm strongest and most familiar with of the School IP site, but certainly given me some areas that I can track into a little bit further, which has been great. Thank you.
Great, you're more than welcome. Andy, do you have anything to add before we close?
No, I don't, and obviously I'll be catching up with Sue, so we can see if there's any kind of bespoke standards that she might want to put into the school sites.
Okay, great, thank you. So for you, Sue, and for anybody else who might be watching the recording, remember that we do offer free and unlimited online training. That's available by booking in directly into Andy and mine's diary, depending on who your customer success manager is. Remember that there are other webinars that have been booked and planned, and they're available to book into from our Deventio website. If you just Google Deventio Education and then navigate to the webinars page, you'll be able to find all of the upcoming webinars that we have on there. So I'll leave you with our contact details. You can get in touch with us via email or directly via the phone line. So unless there are any more questions or queries, I will say thanks very much. Anything to add?
No, lovely. Thanks ever so much.
Brilliant. You're welcome, Sue. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.